extend my welcome this morning. My name is Adam Hildebrand. I get to be one of the pastors here at LVfirst, and what a joy it is to be in this place today. I know it's already been a morning of celebration. Loved having Iris's baptism here, and if you're new with us this morning, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. So glad you're here. So glad you're a part of worship. You chose a great day to be here and to be a part of what we're doing. And if you got any questions, we'd love to talk to you and hear a little bit of your story, have a chance to share a little bit of ours. And if you're newish to LVfirst, and you're like, hold on, I thought you guys were Methodists. Like, I thought you did the sprinkle thing, not the dunk thing. I thought that was somebody else. And like for us, like dry, clean, heavy wash doesn't really matter. We just think we think it's important no matter what to baptize people. And so if you haven't been baptized, we'd love to have that conversation with you about what that means and what that's all about. Whether you're joining us here in person or you're joining us online, we would love to have that conversation. Before we get into the scriptures today, I just want to pause for a moment because tomorrow's a very special day in our country, and we just want to pause and recognize some incredible people in our midst. Tomorrow's Veterans Day, and so I think it's always appropriate for us to stop and to say thank you to people who have served our country so selflessly. And so if you're a veteran and you're here with us this morning, would you stand up real quick and just allow us to say thank you to you? I know we've got a couple in here. We are so grateful for the ways that you have served our nation and served each and every one of us without even knowing it. And so thank you, thank you, thank you to the families and friends who have people who are deployed in all different places, who are serving in all different places. Thank you. We know that it takes a family to make that happen. And so we're grateful for your sacrifices as well. You don't always get to see your loved one. They don't always get to make it home for the holiday meals and all the different things. And it's just, it's a sacrifice for the whole family. So thank you for your gift as well as people continue to serve in all sorts of different places. So last week we had a special time that we call All Saints Sunday, but we also began talking about the idea of the table. And last week we talked about this heavenly banquet table that all of these amazing saints that we celebrated get to be a part of. And we share our lives, they're still a part of our lives, and they're celebrating with us as we celebrate around the table. And the table has become just this really important idea for me. I recently read an article in The Atlantic that talked about the disappearing dining room in the American home and the implications and impacts of that. About 86% of households would really prefer to have a great room as opposed to a specific dining room, preferring to spend more of that square footage on bedrooms and closets, which leads to a lot of interesting things. This author pointed out that it leads to a lot of people eating on the couch or watching TV or doing something else while they're eating, as opposed to attending to the people who are there at the table with them. And even more, it often leads to people eating alone, which is just one of the factors in the loneliness epidemic that we're experiencing as a nation. And the author went on to close the article by saying this: in an age where Americans are spending less and less time with one another and feel more and more divided, a table and some chairs could just be the thing that we all need. Which I think is an incredible idea, because it's not a new idea. It's just something that we might need to reclaim. Over the last 100 years, I don't know if you know this, the average meal time in an American home has gone from 90 minutes to 12 minutes. 90 minutes to 12 minutes. Now, I am going to admit that I am part of the problem, okay? This is me. I sit down at the dinner table and I start eating. I mean, we pray first because, pastor's family, right? Salads don't count. Anyway, we pray and then we start eating, and sometimes I'll start eating, and when I look up because I'm almost done with my meal, Michelle is just staring at me. And I'm like, what? And she's like, are you going to take a breath? Is there a fire somewhere? Do you have somewhere to be? Is there something that's more important to this moment? But like something in my brain is like, this is what I'm doing right now, and I'm not going to stop until I'm done doing this thing. And I'm not ever really present. 90 minutes to 12 minutes. Family time at the dinner table has decreased by over 30% just in the last few decades. Which is interesting because 84% of parents agreed that family meals were important, but only about half of those respondents said that they ate at least one meal together with their family. The average American only has 3 dinners a week with more than one other person. And if you look at statistics around what it does to a family, what it does to people when they sit around a table, it's incredible to see. September 2022 survey found that 91% of parents noticed that their families were less stressed when they shared family meals together. And 84% of adults wish that they could share a meal with a loved one more often. It's fascinating to see what family meals do to kids. Kids who share in a family meal at least twice a week are less likely to engage in risky behaviors, have better relationships with their parents, better academic performance, higher self-esteem, greater sense of resilience, lower risk of substance abuse, lower risk of teen pregnancy, lower risk of depression, lower likelihood of developing eating disorders, and lower rates of obesity. I think one of the contributions that people of faith can make to the wider community is regaining a genuine sense of table-centered community, of having meals with other people, purposefully. Most of us can think about times where just a meal together with a family has really been impactful for us. And for a lot of us, it's because that place is a centering place. It reminds us who we are and what's most important in the world. You know, when I sit down at my table with my family, I'm just Adam. When I sit down with my brother and sisters or a larger family for Thanksgiving or a family meal like that, none of them are impressed by my degrees. None of them are impressed that I'm a doctor, right? I don't know why I use air quotes. Anyway. They would probably be like, a doctor. None of them are impressed by that. None of them are impressed by the size of the church that I lead. None of them are impressed by all of the things that we do. None of them are impressed by so many accolades and things that I could talk about because I'm just Adam. None of them are impressed by all of those things. I get to be just me. And I get to be reminded of the stories and the things that we've shared all through these years that really make me me. And at our dinner table, it's the same thing. My kids are not impressed by me. Not at all. A number of weeks ago, we were having dinner and I was sharing about some project that we're doing here in like great detail and I was just very animated and talking about all the details and all the things that needed to get done and all the people that needed to get involved and and I'm going on and on and on and on until I finally took a breath. And my 12-year-old son, Micah, goes, "So anyway," and begins talking to us about a Star Wars character that none of us have ever heard of. He was not impressed. And it just reminds me of what's most important. So for me, it's no wonder that so many of the most poignant stories of Jesus' life take place around a table. Because tables help to remind us who we are and what's most important. And in Jesus' day, table fellowship was a big deal. The people that you chose to eat with said a lot about you and a lot about them. If you had important people that you could get to come to your table, it helped your social status. But Jesus really shifts that paradigm, inviting all sorts of people into table fellowship with him, giving them value, telling them that they mattered, and reminding all of us that we're all invited to the table. We're all invited to experience Jesus' presence each and every day. Because what Jesus did was Jesus used the intimacy of the shared meal to express truth and grace. And he used the ordinary of the table to impart his extraordinary love and care. One of the times around the table that Jesus had was a story at the home of two sisters. It comes from Luke chapter 10. It starts like this. It says, "Now as they," that's Jesus and his followers, his disciples, went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. Martha was distracted by her many tasks. See, I think Martha invites Jesus to come to her house. Like, here's that they're coming through town. She's like, oh, Jesus is coming through town. Let's get Jesus and see if he can come over to our house. And what's interesting is that Martha, it says, invites Jesus to her house. Fascinating thing in this part of the world, which makes us assume that Martha was probably a widow, a person of low social status. It's pretty bold for her to go and invite the hottest rabbi in town, the one who's got everybody talking about him, the one who's on all the Instagram feeds. Jesus is coming through town, and Martha goes and says, hey, you can come to our house for dinner. And Jesus is like, okay. But when Jesus shows up at dinner, what Martha quickly realizes is that Jesus brings all of his friends with him. Like, he's that guy. Like, he didn't RSVP, but he shows up with 6 other guests. And so she's got to get the extra table out, right? She's got to go into the basement and get the card table out and make sure that it's okay. And she's got to, make sure that she's got all the stuff together for all of these extra people. Can you believe that he brought all of these people into my house? Did you guys see that in the light? Anyway, and then she just hopes that she's got extra themed tablecloths, and she's got to make sure that it all matches. I mean, it's Jesus, right? Like, you got to make sure that it's all put together. Mary is really focused on what she's doing. I mean, she is back and forth to the kitchen. She is busy. She is making sure that this meal is just perfect because, Jesus is at the house, right? I got to impress Jesus. We got our turkey plates. It's very important. This is, we got to make sure that it's all put out correctly. I got the fine china. It goes, okay, let's see here. Got the matching napkins and everything. Spoon should go up top. Fork, knife. Yes. And back and forth and back and forth. Martha is distracted by what she's doing. Martha is distracted by her many tasks. Literally in Greek, it's diakonia. She's distracted by serving, which is so interesting because most other places in the scriptures where that word is used, it's very positive. And Jesus invites us to serve. And here, Martha has gotten so consumed with her tasks, with her serving, with everything that she's doing, with making sure that she's doing everything for Jesus to have a good time, to enjoy the meal, that she's distracted. And what's worse is her sister Mary sitting over here, just enjoying hors d'oeuvres. She's just having a good time, shrimp cocktail. Not in the Jewish household, but that's neither here nor there. realize now that all of my favorite hors d'oeuvres are not kosher. Little hot dogs wrapped in bacon. I mean, like all these things. They're not having them. But Mary's sitting over here just listening to Jesus talk. And I imagine Martha has walked by back and forth to the kitchen a couple of times. And she's done that that thing that some people do every once in a while when they really want you to notice what they're doing. And maybe she made some sort of passive-aggressive comment. Can't imagine anybody ever in a household on a holiday having a meal together making a passive-aggressive comment. Sure would be nice to have somebody help me carry some of these things, wouldn't it? And she starts to spin out because Mary's just sitting there. And she's bothered by what Mary is doing. Now, I want you to notice that Jesus doesn't go, hey, Martha, can I get some more drink? Hey, Martha, this meal, it's okay. Hey, Martha, would you come and sit down? Hey, Martha, you're making everybody stressed out. He doesn't criticize what Martha's doing, but Martha, for some reason, is so anxious and so consumed by what she's doing that she says to Jesus something amazing. Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Which is a great way to start a conversation with Jesus, right? Everybody loves to be demanded of. And what she demands is fascinating. Don't you care that I'm doing all this? I'm doing it all by myself. In fact, she says me 3 times in 2 sentences. So this meal is no longer about Jesus. This meal is about who? Martha. It's about her. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. She starts to spin out in this way. She bargains and blames, like so many of us do when we get overwhelmed. She's been back and forth to the kitchen so many times. She's been back and forth trying to make sure that this meal is perfect. And although she refers to Jesus as Lord, she's concerned only with her own plans for him, not his plans for her. And I can imagine. It's stressful trying to impress people. It's stressful when it feels like it's all about you. It's stressful when it feels like you've got to perform in a certain way so that other people acknowledge your accolades. So that other people go, ooh, man, Martha, this is the best meal I've ever had. It's stressful. Trying to do it all on your own without having any real sense of why other than obligation and impressing people. Worrying about how I look every day and making sure that I've got it all put together. Worrying about where I'm seen, worrying about what pictures I'm posting on Instagram or social media so that everybody can see what I'm doing. Worrying about what school my kids go to, what team my kids are on, which things that they're a part of so that everybody knows that I'm a good parent based on how much I'm investing in these kids to get them into the places that I think they ought to be. Sometimes we're like, Jesus, don't you care about what I'm doing for my good-for-nothing kids? And what subtly happens is I can easily separate my work from my why. And I get frustrated when I don't have a reason for what I'm doing. I'm just doing out of obligation. I'm doing out of a sense of this is why I have to do it. And I get frustrated. And I get mad at everybody else. Why isn't she doing her part? Why isn't she carrying some weight? What's she doing? Why isn't everybody else doing what I'm doing? When you're the one who made the schedule. I mean, I'm the one who makes the schedule. I'm the one who overcommits. But I want others to treat my bad decisions as their priorities. Jesus told Mary to help me. And when I try to define someone else's priorities, you can always tell my priorities are off. Because at this moment, the priority is Jesus and his presence at this meal. And what he wants to say in this moment. So the Lord answered. And sometimes when we read this, we do it real nice. We're like, the Lord answered, Martha, Martha. I don't think he answered like that. I think he was like, hey, Martha, Martha, focus for a minute, right? Jesus wanted to get her attention. He doesn't that's why he says her name twice. It's like sometimes when I'm distracted by so many other things, my kids develop this stutter. Dad, 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 Dad. What? But they knew it was going to take multiple times to get my attention. Martha, Martha, Martha. Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. Their need is only one thing, and Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. We read this, and we often make this either-or comparison. Either you're a Mary or you're a Martha. And for all of us Marthas in the world, we're like, well, I don't know what to do with that, right? I'm a Martha. I know a lot of Marthas. I like to get stuff done. In fact, if a Mary and Martha walked into to my office applying for a job, 99% chance Martha's getting the job, not Mary. Right? I get stuff done. I love to get stuff done. It's not an either-or comparison. It's really about Jesus inviting Martha to put first things first. Why is she so distracted and so tired and so agitated? Again, Jesus never complains about the meal. He never complains about the service. He never complains about the table. What he points to is her worry and distraction, that she's literally drawn apart or pulled in different directions. That's what those words mean. Jesus says this is about attention and focus. What's the why behind what you're doing? Because we become the things that we focus on, right? It's neuroplasticity. Paul calls it the renewal of our mind. But the things that we focus on really matter. Jesus wants Martha to pay attention to the why to what she is doing. Because she's working out of her own power and her own wisdom and her own knowledge. And the greater thing in this moment is the presence of Christ at the table. The presence of Jesus in that time, in that day, in that moment. And Jesus just wants to remember why she's serving a meal in the first place. He doesn't tell her to stop. He doesn't say, come sit down. He doesn't say, you should be more like Mary. He just says, look, Mary's chosen to pay attention. And you're not paying attention. You're distracted and worried. Just be attentive to your own feelings, your own emotions. Understand why you're doing what you're doing. Because we can get stuck in a place where we feel like we're constantly doing for Jesus instead of doing from Jesus' presence in our lives. And there's a big difference. Where this story is placed is no accident. Luke compiled this story in a certain way. It's right after the story of the Good Samaritan. Because for us, we can kind of like get focused. We're like, okay, got to do the Good Samaritan thing, got to do the Good Samaritan thing, got to do the Good Samaritan thing so that I look like a Good Samaritan and people think that I'm a Good Samaritan, and I got to do the thing, and I do it out of my own power, and I don't do it out of the presence of Jesus. And so now I'm doing it for Jesus, not from Jesus' presence in my life. And so I get worn out and burned out because all of the things that I do don't have a why behind them. I'm not doing them from Jesus' presence with me. And when you don't know the why, it's natural to feel overwhelmed and anxious. But the reality is that Jesus' presence brings purpose to our actions. And Jesus isn't nearly as concerned about what you've accomplished or what you're doing, but he's more concerned about who you are in the process. Mary sitting with Jesus is doing so because she's present with Jesus, and she realizes that Jesus' presence matters. If Martha would have taken time to realize that Jesus was present and that what she was doing was because of Jesus' presence and not her own obligation, she wouldn't have been nearly as worried and anxious as she was. It's not a comparison of the contemplative life versus the life of service. We both have to have these things, both of these things in our life. But we've got to know why it is that we're doing what we're doing. We've got to do them from the very presence of Jesus in our life. Martha's problem wasn't really her actions, it was her attitude. It's the way that she understood what it was that she was doing. Because listening to Jesus is not opposed to serving Jesus. I mean, he will in fact need to eat. Somebody's got to get the meal. It's not an either or. It's acknowledging the presence of Jesus in what we're doing, in all of the things that we're doing. Our work day in, day out, our preparing a meal, our sitting at the table, our looking up long enough to see our kids, our spouse, or a loved one. It's acknowledging presence, God, in all of those places, in all of those moments. And maybe you came in today worried and distracted about so many things. And Jesus is going, Adam, focus. But he's probably saying your name, not mine. I want to invite you to turn your attention to Jesus, to realize that what you're doing comes from him and his presence in our life. And today, maybe you need to spend a few moments at this table that we call an altar, just focusing your life around Jesus' presence with you, so that everything you do comes from his presence.